one of the things that I really love about Magpie is that it's a slow burn, but it's also consistently fun and it's a tight 90 minutes. So how do you kind of achieve this balance in that tension?
Well, yes, tension is very important, isn't it, to certainly a noir or a thriller. I mean, I guess we created it in a few ways, through the actors, certainly, and Daisy's performance, especially music, everything we tried to do in camera, and like design it was to give a sense of like something coming, something not being quite right, a sense of like paranoia, a sense of like repressed aggression that threatens to bubble through. So yeah, there's a mixture of things. I guess the lighting too, trying to create a kind of steely, cold, restrained palette. And quite a harsh. We shot in winter, which was quite harsh and grey, and so to sort of bring all of that to bear on and try and get it all on screen.
Yeah, absolutely. And Magpie is a very sensual film, but it doesn't show much sex or nudity. How do you think the film is able to achieve this like psychosexual tension without these elements?
Right. I mean, that's a really, I'm glad you found it sensual because I think that's what we all try to do. I mean, costume is a big part of that. Natalie Rohr was our costume designer. The design, Amanda McArthur's our designer. And the house itself was designed to sort of be cold but quite lush in a way. And I guess actually, we've concentrated to create the sensuality where it was needed in the story. We've concentrated quite a bit on faces and the mouth and eyes and sort of the features of the face and the angles of the face and tried to kind of light them in such a way to give them whether it be a softness or a kind of warmth. So yeah, it was about kind of because obviously, and in the text messages in the film, there's a text message affair, and we really wanted that to be visual to kind of express the feeling that you get when you're like, into it with someone on text messages. So, always trying to think visually and, let the theme be expressed visually kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another part of the film that's very important to the atmosphere is the soundtrack, from the score to the needle drops. I think they're wonderful. Could you speak a bit to the selection of the music for the film?
Sure. So our composer is Isabel Waller-Bridge, and she did such a beautiful job on creating a kind of like we were talking about like the great composers of like tension, like obviously like Penderecki, Johnny Greenwood, Morton Feldman was a real big influence on this, and then Isabel took those references and took the picture away and came up with something like wonderful and original. So the score itself is a thing. And then yeah, we have like three, I suppose three particular needle drops. The final one perhaps being the most kind of the one that I knew I wanted from like the beginning. Just tonally, I was like, if we can get to that section and that song makes sense and works to picture, then we will have done the film right to my view. So yeah, that was a from a long playlist, I kind of carry around playlists for months, if not years, on projects, and then it's such a joy. It's actually one of the most pleasurable parts is building a soundtrack to a fictional world that you haven't even made yet, and then when you can tap into it, you just it sends you down rabbit holes, and you're listening to all kinds of stuff. So yeah, those are all kind of on the playlist.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, this is your first film as a director. Did you find it intimidating working on, such, I would say it's fair to say like a high profile project, a very ambitious project, or, having done very ambitious things on the stage, did you find it a natural transition?
It was, I suppose, this side of it, it feels natural. I think like when you're at the beginning of anything. I mean, like there's a rule that I try to live by, which is if you're not frightened, you're not really doing it right. Like I think David Bowie said, you need to be just far enough out in the water that your feet can't quite touch the ground, and that's when you're in a position to make something interesting. So I generally try and do the things that frighten me the most. And I'd wanted to do a feature for a while, and of course, when this script dropped in my inbox, I was very excited, and Daisy was attached, Shazad was attached. That was incredibly exciting. And yeah, I was definitely nervous for sure, for sure. But I mean that, nerves are great. Nerves are a big natural part of anything that you want to do. So I try to use them to power me rather than destroy me.
Yeah, absolutely. And the film shows some of the challenges of working with child actors, mostly from a family perspective, but obviously now you've gotten to experience the challenges of working with child actors from a filmmaker's perspective. What do you think are kind of, some of the challenges and some of the rewards of working with young people on a film set?
Well, Hiba Ahmed, who played Matilda in the film, this was her first ever piece of screen work. So Daisy and I went to Hiba's house once she'd been cast and took care to spend a little bit of time with her and her mum Hannah, so that we could so that we wouldn't be strangers to her on set. So and Daisy was really wonderful in like being with Hiba on set, and as was Matilda, who had scenes with her. And we brought on a wonderful director to sort of work with Hiba called Lizzie, who kind of just kept her kind of energy up, because it's really difficult for a kid to be hanging around for hours and hours and hours in a cold trailer. So it was about kind of maintaining her energy. But it's the old adage, she was so brilliant, and I treated her no differently than an actor of adult age, if and try to make it fun, like trying to make it playful. But that's true of working with any actor, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, so obviously this one, it's not exactly lighthearted film. Did you find that to be challenging with working with her?
I guess she was protected from the context of some of the things that was happening. So wasn't aware of the full story, but she could read between the lines, and she would say very insightful things about the Shazad's character Ben, going, understanding that what some of the stuff he was doing was like bad. No judgment though here, but at that moment it was bad. But no, so she was really sort of playing the scene she was in and wasn't necessarily aware of and she hasn't seen the film. Her parents came to see it. Our friends, cast and crew screening were very delighted. And Hibbert then was there afterwards and we all got to say hello. But, you know, you, I think the scenes they're in, you make them fun and playful and then they go home.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I think the other thing about the film, you talked about this a little bit earlier, or the locations. I think they're phenomenal. How did you discover, the locations that you shot the film in?
Well, we had a great locations manager called Ross Kirkman. So it starts there. And then, so the house, I suppose, is the kind of hero location. We looked at a lot of houses, and anyone who's had shooting in the house will know that there's a lot of people, a lot of equipment. So we needed something of a certain size, but more so, we really like that house is kind of oversized in a way. It's kind of like an exploded or like what do I mean? Like enlarged version of like the dream house, it's in the country, it has water by it, has a lot of glass, it has beautiful furniture. But in a way, having achieved that aspiration as a couple, it's started to destroy them. It's just too big for them, it's too far away, it's isolating. And for Annette, when Daisy's character, when she's left alone, I very much wanted this kind of feeling of like that she was very dwarfed by it, and that the house even had its own kind of agenda against her. At least she felt that. So it then became a kind of cold, grim. And then when the kids come home, she makes it into a warm family home. So we wanted it to feel isolated and scary when she's by herself, and then warm and kind of hospitable when the kids were home.
Yeah, absolutely. And then obviously, this has been a huge year for you. Obviously, next up you have Vanya coming to off Broadway. But are you planning after that to sticking with theater? You want to stick with film? Like, which side do you want to work in, or do you want to work in both continually?
I'm really greedy. I really like all of them. I like television too. I'm just about to finish on a mini series, an Agatha Christie called Towards Zero for BBC. So I like all the genres, and sometimes I'm kind of driven by the story. So some stories work are just suited better to one format. But my immediate focus after Vanya is feature number two, which I'm really excited about. So that's where my energy is sort of being channeled at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I look forward to seeing it. Thank you again for your time and have a
Sean, that
great
was a
day.
thank you very much. You too.
Thank you. Have a great day.